What does anyone really know about John Worton?
He was an individual with a serious criminal history.
He just didn't seem to be the type that Suzanne would have gone for.
His personality was intense, reactive, paranoid, in your face.
He is dangerous.
My sister was petrified. 1 minute he'd be sat there on his phone, and the next minute he'd be hitting you.
He said, "You'll never see your daughter or grandchild again."
It's really upsetting to think and wonder what happened in that house.
This was never gonna end well.
The hairdressing salon, a place for chit-chat. But today's topic is a troubled one. Laura's sister's boyfriend.
She said he made me feel uneasy, a bit frightened, trying to book an appointment for your sister to get her hair done. She went, so I booked your sister in with me, and she come in a couple of days later.
The hairdresser said that she'd met Suzanne, and Suzanne had got a black eye.
And she said, I asked your sister, well, what's happened, Suzanne? How did you get that black eye?
And she tried to make out that she'd had an accident on a quad bike. But the hairdresser didn't believe that.
She said it didn't look like an accident, Laura, it looked like a punch.
The family have not seen Suzanne for some time, but concerned, they go and check on her. They are shocked by what they see.
We kind of like forced our way in, because at that point we kind of knew something was not quite right.
She looked frightened. He was in the kitchen and he kept on pouncing in and out, and he was getting more angry and agitated.
There was a mattress on the floor. It looked like someone had punched a door in the kitchen. And like me and Laura went and we were looking around and we looked at each other as if to say, what's kind of going on here?
She just kept on saying, I'm fine, you know, there's nothing wrong.
Suzanne was sitting on a sofa and he was behind by the kitchen.
And then I turned and looked at him and I said, are you hitting my sister? And he got really, really angry.
We were petrified because he threatened us. He was like, get out of the house now.
We had to leave. And that was the last day I saw my sister.
Suzanne Van Hagen, seemingly a woman with the world at her feet.
Suzanne was always very sporty. Always very sporty, very independent, always had lots of friends.
Suzanne had an absolute cracking job, something she really, really enjoyed. She passed an awful lot of exams at the firm that she was at.
She'd bought a house on her own, like a part-buy, part-rent house, and she'd worked really hard.
She would just put herself out for anybody and always put other people in front of herself.
She was a really, really good mum as well. She absolutely adored Chloe. They were so close.
Chloe, now 18, is Suzanne's daughter. The pair share a special bond.
It was nice because it was the two of us, and next door she had like her best friend that she knew, and my best friend also lived next door, and it was nice.
We were such a close-knit family. We went on holiday together, you know, we did more everything together. Chloe was just our grandchild and we absolutely adored her.
Saturday night we'd push the sofas together in the living room and watch a film downstairs with the popcorn that we bought on the Friday night. That was like every week.
But there is one thing missing from Suzanne's life.
Both Laura and Claire had got into relationships, and I think it's something that Suzanne wanted.
She didn't stay with Chloe's dad, it didn't work out.
She just wanted someone to love her. That's how Suzanne, wanted to feel loved.
In spring 2010, Suzanne gets what she's looking for. They meet online. His name is John Worton.
He was very athletic. He wasn't very tall, but he was very muscular.
He was a different character. He wasn't like the people that she used to date.
We were told by Suzanne that he was a trainer and he trained boxers.
The family is surprised by Suzanne's choice.
She asked if he could come to my wedding, which was in the August of 2010, which I said that was fine. I wasn't too happy about it because I didn't really know who he was.
He was quite eccentric. He was quite loud, over-friendly.
You know, when you just feel a bit like you want to step back a little bit, it was just a bit too much.
He just didn't seem to be the type that Suzanne would have gone for. But that was Suzanne's choice, and we obviously went along with it.
In love and in a hurry, the relationship becomes intense.
We did call her sweetie, and Valentine's Day used to go above and beyond. I think Suzanne just liked the whole of being loved and looked after and someone giving her attention.
I think we just started seeing him between the May-June 2010, and he quickly has moved in, living at Suzanne's.
I just remember him being there more and more.
She would go to my parents' house every day because my dad would take Chloe to school and pick her up, but that completely stopped. We would always go to my parents on a Sunday for Sunday dinner, but she quickly stopped coming.
She kind of just gently took herself out of the family unit.
But she just said, it's my little family now. I've got my own little family and we're doing things as a family together.
But the new family member is something of a mystery.
There was something that was niggling you, thinking, this isn't right. There's something, not right with him.
We were a little bit worried about the way that he acted, and yeah, he was a bit full on.
We didn't know anything about his family. We didn't know about if he'd got children. We didn't know any of that. We didn't even know his age.
There is something else they don't know. He isn't a boxing trainer. He is a cage fighter. Suzanne will learn that his violence isn't contained to the ring.
Within 6 weeks of that relationship, she contacted a neighbour to say that she's had an argument with John Worton.
When Sue was crying, she said that John had kicked off, grabbed her by the throat, which you could see the marks around her throat, squeezed that hard that it felt like she couldn't breathe.
And her neighbour, quite rightly, said, you need to leave this individual. But Suzanne appeared to make excuses for his behaviour, and she went home and back to that relationship.
At home, Worton is keen to impose his authority on Chloe.
I had to ask if I wanted to eat anything or get a drink and things like that. I'd overhear conversations like, she ate this and didn't ask and she left it out.
Everyone has a bad feeling about Worton, but the reality is far worse than they imagine.
What we know about John Worton prior to meeting Suzanne was that he had been in other relationships, and I don't think they had ended well.
We learned that John had got a history of domestic violence.
He had previous convictions for robbery, and this wasn't just going into a shop and wielding a knife. This was actually targeting vulnerable elderly pensioners.
We found out that he'd spent time in prison.
In fact, Worton has spent nearly a decade behind bars for a succession of burglaries and violent robberies in 2000.
She knew nothing about his past, and that's concerning.
Psychologist Dr. Donna Youngs believes his violence defines his personality.
Within him, there raged a hatred, a battle against the world, and it was barely hidden. And this kind of activity he will have been very drawn to. It will have given him an outlet for the anger against the world that I think is deep within John Worton.
Chloe is learning to read John Worton's moods and his temper.
It wasn't like a gradual thing where he just gets angry and angry. It was literally like 1 minute he'd be sat there on his phone and the next minute he'd be hitting you.
In fact, the convicted criminal's erratic behaviour belies another secret.
He'd actually been assessed for mental health, and on one occasion he'd actually been sectioned and diagnosed with schizophrenia.
I knew he was on medication because we went to town one time to pick up his medication, and he just said, he gave it to me, and he said, put that in that hole. There was a hole in the bricks when we walked past. He said, just put that in there. He chucked it out.
He may not be taking his prescribed medication, but he is taking something.
There's also suggestion that he took recreational drugs as well as alcohol. Mixing that concoction together is a bit of a recipe for disaster.
I remember seeing like rolled up pieces of paper. When I was little, I didn't know what that is, but now I'd understand a bit more that that's a sign of him taking drugs.
What 7-year-old Chloe does understand is Worton's violence.
You used to see him hit her all the time. Like, not all the time, but more than a child should see someone hitting their parent. I obviously used to see her having marks on her black eyes, bruises.
I think from an outsider looking in, everyone would say, just leave him, you need to get out of that relationship.
Dr. Donnie Youngs believes it is the manner of their meeting which makes leaving him so difficult.
Suzanne will have bonded to him because they met online. If they'd met in real life before the bonding had occurred, she may have picked up on the cues that everybody else could see.
Suzanne grows distant from her family.
I used to live just round the corner from her. She'd often come round to my house and pop in. I'd phone her every day on the phone, but all of that just quickly stopped.
On the rare occasions her family do see her, the changes in Suzanne are worrying.
She was quite timid. Like, she wasn't as talkative when we saw her, and a bit more withdrawn.
She just didn't look herself, kind of let herself go.
Her appearance changed quite a bit.
Her hair was short. She just looked different. She looked tired.
I thought she'd lost quite a lot of weight.
She has, at Worton's insistence.
He actually made her a diet plan and like a fitness plan because he said that she was overweight and chubby and all these things. So she stopped eating as much because of that. She was very self-conscious.
We see controlling behaviour quite frequently in relationships, but the controlling behaviour that we see with John Worton, where he controls, minimises what she's able to eat, tries to get her to change her hair, there's something about it which is different. It's producing an individual who becomes dishevelled, who becomes unkempt, who loses enormous amounts of weight. This is control with an agenda to destroy.
It's not just Suzanne's appearance he wants to change.
Suzanne had informed us in the Christmas time that she'd lost her job and that they'd made redundancies.
We could never understand, why she was made redundant because of the offences she had with the company.
Suzanne left because she couldn't go into work anymore. Obviously, he didn't want her to work.
He didn't like her mixing with other people.
It will have been very easy for John Worton to persuade Suzanne and her daughter to have nothing to do with the outside world, with her family, with her workplace, because they will become brainwashed by this completely at war mentality that I think runs deeply within John Worton.
In 2012, the family's strained relationship with Worton implodes when he visits Suzanne's mother, Anne.
He said, I want to marry Suzanne and I want to change my name to your name. And Anne said, well, I'm not really happy with that. And she said, I don't really like the way you're treating Suzanne. And I don't think Les would like you to have his name. And from that point, he went ballistic.
This sense of being ready to battle, being on high alert, always ready to battle, is just beneath the surface. It doesn't take much to trigger it.
He shot out of the chair, started to go out, turned round, and he said, you'll never see your daughter or grandchild again.
And this is all a build-up of control by Worton to isolate Suzanne from friends and family. And because she hasn't got that support network around her, she is very much alone, and that makes her extremely high risk.
But there is someone who does know what's happening to Suzanne.
Suzanne's neighbours had a lot of correspondence with the police. I think it was approximately around 27 times they called out the police.
They approached the neighbours and said, look, we need you to be our eyes and ears because, we can't be here all the time. And what we'd like you to do is keep a diary of any noises, any arguments, any strange behaviours that you see.
There was an instance where he'd beaten Suzanne up and she'd rushed out into the garden and was hiding under the trampoline. And the next door neighbour came out.
Suzanne's neighbour does not wish to be identified, but she reads from the journal she has kept.
I went into the back garden and heard Sue in her garden crying. I looked over the fence. Her face, nose, her eye and her cheek were swollen and starting to bruise. She had a cut on her foot that was bleeding. I asked if she was okay, if she wanted me to ring someone, family or the police. She said no, she needs to handle it.
She said to Suzanne, Suzanne, you've got to tell your mum and dad what's going on. You know, you can't keep going on like this. The response was, no, please don't ever tell mum and dad. Don't tell mum and dad. Promise me.
She told me that John had taken her away for a few days. He had beaten her quite bad, blacked both eyes. Her whole face was swollen. He'd kicked and punched her in the chest and broke a rib, pinned her to the floor and bit into her nose.
Yet Suzanne tells no one, and the abuse continues for her and her young daughter Chloe.
There was a time that he said that I looked at him weirdly, so I wasn't allowed in the house because I looked at him a certain way. So he kicked us out, and I think we slept in a park for a night.
Putting them out on the street is something Worton does often.
December 2011, I heard arguments in the street. Sue was running up and down the street screaming that John had taken Chloe after kicking her out of the house.
I don't think there was ever a moment where my mum ever relaxed, because he could literally for no reason be horrible and hit her and kick her out.
Dr. Donnie Youngs is a specialist in the psychology of offenders. She recognises Worton's behaviour.
This sense of needing to kick out at those vulnerable, weak individuals in his sphere was something that would have emerged over the years in a number of different situations, was something that was barely beneath the surface, was something that was triggered very easily by any kind of confrontation.
Confrontation that Chloe often witnesses.
We were worried about Chloe because, Chloe was only about 7 years of age then.
I'd asked to put a safeguarding in for Chloe.
Social services arrange a visit. Worton briefs his troops.
He would say to you, don't say anything. He'd say, we're all happy, you're happy to be here. That's when you know, if someone tells you you shouldn't say something, especially when he's that scary, you don't say anything.
Worton is prepared. He even has an excuse to explain bloodstains in the house.
So he'd moved the carpet rug. We had a black rug in the living room downstairs. He'd moved it into my room upstairs to cover it and to say, oh, when the door opens, like my mum tripped and that's why the blood's on the windowsill.
An increasingly difficult home life, and now out of work, Suzanne is no longer meeting her mortgage payments. Her home is repossessed.
Because I didn't live too far from Suzanne's, I would always drive past Suzanne's house and I'd be checking to see if her car was on the drive. And I'd noticed that the car wasn't there any longer and it hadn't been there for a couple of weeks.
Chloe was taken out of school and she never said a word.
We just left and that was it. We just went.
She lost her house and she moved in with him. So she lost everything.
The family sense Suzanne and Chloe are in real danger. They make their concerns official.
That evening, I went to police station with my parents and I reported Suzanne as missing.
We were there till probably 2 in the morning.
A police officer said to me that I needed to get my sister out of where she was. And I said to that police officer, I don't know where my sister is. I said, I can't get her out, where is she? And they said, I can't tell you where she is, but you need to get her out.
And I remember Laura saying to the police, if you don't do something about it, the next time we'll see Suzanne, she'll be dead.
Worton moves Suzanne and Chloe to Frankley, a suburb on the Birmingham-Worcestershire border.
She is moving from her perfectly nice home with her daughter into his home, which is described as squalid.
It's a battle strategy Dr. Donna Youngs recognises.
The move to the one-bedroom flat has a feeling to me of being in combat, being a military sort of bunkering down sense, removing away from the enemy, a minimal survival accommodation while you are at war. It smacks to me of somebody who, as I believe, felt that he was in battle at war. And at this time, Suzanne and Chloe are part of his army.
She ended up living in a masonette flat, one-bedroomed. Yeah, not very nice.
They'd sleep in the bed, and sometimes there'd be either a bit on the floor where another bit where I would sleep, or sometimes me and my mum would just sleep in the bed and he would be wherever he would be.
Much later, Laura visits the flat. It is not what she expects.
There was just a mattress on the floor in one room, and then there was a living room with a sofa, with a broken window as well. The window was like all broken, hanging when we walked in. Pots and pans everywhere. It was just, not how Suzanne lived.
Away from Suzanne's family, Worton's control is absolute.
He took control of Suzanne's phone. He closed down all of her social media accounts.
I was scared because I didn't know where my sister was living. I couldn't have contact with her anymore. I was blocked on her account on Facebook. I couldn't contact her via her phone anymore. So we didn't have any contact. We didn't know where she was.
Suzanne Van Hagen is in an abusive relationship. There have been 27 calls to police by her neighbour.
8 of those were domestic abuse cases, yet to my knowledge he was never arrested on any of those allegations.
Suzanne suffered. She suffered those years that she was with him. She lost her house, she lost her personality, she was beaten black and blue.
All she wants is to help the man she loves.
She'd do anything to help anybody, and sometimes I always thought, if people were taking advantage of her because of her nature.
Suzanne had a lovely, caring personality, and she always saw the best in people.
She was the type of person who wanted to make things better, wanted to help people, believed in optimistic, upbeat. She wanted things to be okay, but she was fighting a losing battle with Worton, who was, from the get-go, on this destructive life path.
Her life is ruled by fear. Chloe recalls a morning getting ready for school.
We went to get in the car, but the car had a flat tyre. She was kind of panicking about the flat tyre. She was like, what should we do? She was like, just go in, go to sleep, nothing happened, you're not going to school today, and that was it. It was very frantic.
It's only a matter of time before Worton sees the flat tyre.
And then as soon as he left, she looked out the window. I remember him coming back and screaming about it, but that was it. I just remember him screaming, and she went out to talk to him, and it was just him screaming at her.
In 2012, Worton tries to legally adopt Chloe. He is not successful, but insists that she call him Daddy. For former detective Paul Barton, this is all about control.
He would be telling her, it's just us, no one wants to know us anymore. And he would say, if you leave me, Chloe's going to be fatherless again.
Every morning he would drive us to the train station, and then me and him would get on the train, go to school, and then we'd do that every morning.
He enrolls Suzanne on a vocational course.
I didn't know she was at college.
She ended up doing a beauty therapy course, I think.
But her movements are closely managed.
He'd take her, pick her up, drop her off, but also meet her at lunchtime, and they would have to have their lunch together.
Anywhere she went, he knew about it.
Worton wants control of everything.
She had nothing of her own. She didn't have the opportunity to just leave. She had her own car, that was her car. Then we got a new car, that wasn't her car anymore. So things slowly started getting taken away.
His cruelty is escalating.
He kicked her out in the snow.
He would say, get out of my house. He would be screaming at us, telling us to get out and that we're not welcome there, and it's not our house, it's his house and it's his rules.
Suzanne had to cover herself in plastic bags to keep warm.
It is the evening of February the 7th, 2013.
I went to bed and then I couldn't sleep, so I'd asked my mum to come back and help me go to sleep, and she took me into bed and she said, it's fine, I love you. And that's the last thing I remember.
In the early hours, Chloe wakes.
And then I remember her on the floor, just so the bed, and she was just by the door. I remember him being on top of her and putting something in her mouth and strangling her. Because I said, why is she getting up? What's wrong with that? And he was, oh, she's just sleeping. And he'd poured water on her or something. And then I said, you need to call an ambulance.
Chloe follows Worton into the living room. He appears to dial 999, but it's not on a phone.
And he got the TV remote and just dialed 999 on the remote. And I knew that wasn't right, but I also knew if I did it, that could happen to me.
For now, there is nothing she can do.
So he just said, go to sleep, she'll be up in the morning, it's fine, she's just sleeping.
When morning comes, the house is silent.
Then I woke up in the morning and he was in the living room. At first I thought he was asleep. And then neither of them were moving or anything.
Years of living under Worton's controlling regime have conditioned the 9-year-old.
I was scared that if I called an ambulance and he woke up, I'd get told off. So I was pacing for ages and then I finally called.
On the 8th of February 2013, at about 9:50 in the morning, they received a 999 call from a young girl saying that her daddy is believed dead and bleeding from the mouth. And also, mother is dead as well.
Then they came and the police were telling me to leave. We'll put you in the car, and I didn't want to leave. I was like, no, I wanted to stay with my mum.
They discovered that John was in the front room with a sheet over him and was clearly deceased and did have blood coming out of his mouth. And then when they were led upstairs by Chloe, they found Suzanne, who was in her bedroom, just against the bed.
It is a morning Les Van Hagen cannot forget.
I'd just come in from golf and I'd literally would just walk through the door and 2 police officers came into the house and they said, are you Suzanne's father? And I said, yes. And he said, I'm sorry, but I've got some bad news.
The police accompany him to his wife's workplace.
I walked into the foyer and she looked at me and she said, Suzanne. I said, yes. And she said, she's dead. And I said, yes, both of them. And she thought I meant Chloe. But I said, no, it was John.
The family meet with police to learn how they believe Suzanne has died.
The police officer who was leading the investigation had come with one of the liaison officers to explain, what he thought had happened.
They determined that this was an unexplained death, potentially suspicious, and actually declared it as a murder scene at that time.
He said that he had killed my sister in a headlock like this, and he stood up and showed us how it had happened.
Both bodies undergo post-mortems. The results are totally unexpected.
They established that both John and Suzanne had a fatal dose of PMA in them, which is a very high strain of ecstasy. It's actually known as Dr. Death or Killer as a street name.
This changes everything. For Les, more devastating news.
The DCI came round to see us and said that it was no longer a murder-suicide. He said it was self-inflicted and they treated it as a sex game gone wrong.
We knew Suzanne would never, ever take drugs. That is not, the person that Suzanne was. And we said this to the police, and the liaison officer said to us, well, you didn't know your sister at the end.
It's accepted that she died as a result of this fatal ingestion of PMA, but the question is, how did that get there?
Was there any drinks? Could it have been tested? But they just dismissed everything.
Suzanne actually had bruising around her neck. And again, that should have raised suspicion very early on as to how she had met her death.
They come back and said it was just a sex game that had gone wrong, and that was it.
The only potential witness to events is discounted.
Chloe was never spoken to. You know, she was able to make that phone call to the emergency services, so she would have been eligible for a specialist interview by trained officers and a social worker to elicit as much information as they possibly can out of her.
It was absolutely disgraceful. They didn't know Suzanne.
To have your daughter portrayed as a druggie, in effect, and the excuse for the bruising around her neck was a sex game that had gone wrong, you know, that's just unforgivable.
The media is quick to report the story.
It caused such a lot of damage to Suzanne's reputation. There was a lot of really unkind, very nasty things wrote about Suzanne.
As the family is given permission to collect her belongings from the flat, they are shocked at what they find.
My sister had been killed in that flat, but that evidence was just left there. The police had clearly not investigated or even looked for any evidence in that flat.
It was a mess. It was quite eerie as well. It didn't feel like a home anymore.
There was no clothes in the house. There was a suitcase in the hallway. They found receipts of where Suzanne had filled the car up with petrol. Passport was on the ground outside.
Suzanne had a handbag on the floor, and we found a handwritten letter that Suzanne had written to him.
The letter that she left, you know, apologising about trivial things, you know, yeah, it's really upsetting to think and wonder what happened in that house.
Laura reads the words her sister wrote to the man she loved.
We finally started talking while watching TV, and you asked me a question and I didn't reply. Because, yes, I wasn't listening properly, because I was trying to watch this programme that you liked, and I asked you to repeat it, but you go mad. I wasn't listening fully, but I didn't deserve the reaction you gave me. You started shouting at me, you kicked me in the leg, and you hit me in the face, and you chucked me out in the street at 1 o'clock in the morning, in the cold.
If we'd have known what was going on, we would have gone in there and we would have dragged Suzanne out of there.
I didn't realise the severity of it all. I didn't think about domestic violence. I never even dreamt that she wouldn't be here with us now.
For the family, the circumstances surrounding Suzanne's death are clear.
Suzanne was leaving him, and this is the most vulnerable time that any woman could be in, that she was actually leaving.
The Van Hagens believe Worton has killed Suzanne. Could they be right?
This is a man living with an ever-present enemy. And it's a man who will have recognised when he's at the end of that battle. Rather than battling the world, he's now destroying first Suzanne and then himself. It's a final act of war.
The Van Hagens want justice for their daughter.
Our goal was to prove that Suzanne was not a drug addict, that she was a victim of domestic violence and coercion.
We knew it wasn't the truth, and it wouldn't be fair on Suzanne.
The Van Hagen family faced a battle to prove Suzanne was killed by John Worton. The case is closed, but Les will not give up.
It just seemed to consume me. You know, I was always on my computer writing things down and sending off emails.
I've just seen what a toll it's taken on the family, and especially Les.
I had a heart attack, but that didn't deter me. You know, we knew we were in the right, and we carried on.
Les and Anne applied to the family court for guardianship of their granddaughter, What they are about to learn will change everything.
The judge asked for reports on Chloe. Those reports came, and that was the first time that we'd found out the real truth of what John was about. We were devastated to know that the police knew what was going on.
There was a marker on my sister's house for domestic violence, and that no officer could attend that house on their own because of him being a cage fighter and because of how dangerous he was.
And the National Health, NHS, knew what was going on.
He was let out of a psych ward earlier than he should have been.
Social services knew what was going on. Found that social services on 3 occasions were going to take Chloe into care and decided to give him another chance. Everybody, the police, social services, psychiatric, all seemed to be wanting to give John a second chance.
In 2016, an inquest into Suzanne's death records an open verdict. For the family, it is another blow. They turn to Professor Jane Monckton-Smith, an expert in domestic violence.
I was asked by the family to make some comments on Suzanne's death and put a fresh pair of eyes on the circumstances.
She focuses on the neighbour's account of Worton grabbing Suzanne by the throat.
Somebody who uses non-fatal strangulation, the prediction that they might kill you goes up by 7-8 times. It's highly, highly predictive.
Professor Monckton-Smith conducts a thorough review of the facts known to police.
They absolutely knew that John Worton had this violent history. They knew he had a violent history with partners. They knew that he had serious mental health issues, and they knew that he was a drug taker.
But at the coroner's court, they didn't know half of what went on.
They believe key evidence has been overlooked.
There was a child in the room who actually saw what happened.
It should have been and would have been a different outcome.
In my opinion, what happened was that John Worton found out that Suzanne was leaving him. And as we know in these domestic homicides, that's the key trigger for committing a homicide.
Immediately after the attack, key witness Chloe doesn't speak about that night.
Chloe had a lot of counselling at the beginning. She could talk about Suzanne, her mother, but as soon as it went on to John, she just clammed up.
Then 3 years after her mother's death, a breakthrough.
And said, you know, do you remember what happened that night? And she said that she did, and she remembered John putting Mum into her armlock and putting something down her throat. But that was never became admissible. Apparently, children tell lies.
The Criminal Injuries Board conduct a review to see if Chloe is eligible for compensation.
The Criminal Injuries Board found in our favour and actually put in writing that Suzanne had been killed due to an act of violence perpetrated by a partner. And that was our first one where we were just the elation that we had.
Police cannot ignore Les any longer.
But finally, we managed to get a re-investigation done. It took us 3-4 years of lobbying, letter writing, kicks in the teeth. So Suzanne died in the February 13, and it was August of 16 that we managed to get this investigation.
In 2017, West Midlands Police commissioned the Logden Report, an investigation into the force's failings surrounding Suzanne's death.
One of the liaison officers said to me, Laura, your sister had 2 legs and she should have used them. Like it was her fault that she was in a domestic violence relationship. These women can't just leave. You know, the control that these men have on them is unbelievable.
And it can happen to anybody. I don't think people realise, you know, that it's not just a certain people that it happens to, because it's not.
2 years later, police post a video on social media.
On behalf of West Midlands Police, I wish to apologise for a number of failings by the force in the handling of Suzanne's case, both before and after her death, and to acknowledge the immense additional distress this has caused to Suzanne's family.
We had the apology that we were right and they were wrong.
We deeply regret a number of missed opportunities to investigate Suzanne's circumstances more widely and to engage with her, and we could and should have done more to protect Suzanne and her daughter.
Oh, the relief. Everything just drained from us.
I can only hope that these words provide some reassurance to Suzanne's family the force has reflected on and learnt from its serious shortcomings.
Suzanne's family have also reflected.
It's something that you can look back and think, you know, why did she not share that with us? Why did she not come to us for help?
It's something that we as a family did not know anything at all about, but we found out the hard way, and this is something that we needed to pass on to other people.
He was a very manipulative individual and probably would have known exactly the things to say to make Suzanne feel like he was the one.
They're very clever people and they can get into people's heads very quickly and it can become very dangerous.
The one thing about John Worton was that he gave attention. His personality was intense, reactive, paranoid, in your face. The one thing he wouldn't have done would have been to ignore Suzanne, and that's what she needed.
Suzanne wanted someone to love her, and her vulnerability of just wanting that love cost her life, really.
10 years on from Suzanne's death, her family are left with their memories.
We remember Suzanne every day. She was just a lovely girl, and we all really do miss her.
Suzanne Van Hagen was a victim of domestic violence, but her death certificate remains unchanged.
We have got justice for Suzanne, but the only thing I wanted, for me personally, I wanted her death certificate to represent that. And I think until that has been the truth on her death certificate, I don't think, I could rest.
If you or someone you know has been affected by any of the issues raised in tonight's programme, please go to channel5.com/helplines for information and support. Next tonight, Cricket World Cup highlights of India's semi-final clash against New Zealand.